Yeah.
Okay, and we're back. Always wanted to say that. Okay, so now we've got our board and we've got three dressed faces. We've got a reference face, a reference edge, it's plane to thickness. Now we need to rip to width. Okay? So we've got one rough edge left on here, we need to rip to width. We're going to do that on the table saw. Okay? How many of you have used a table saw before? Okay. What's the biggest problem with a table saw? Or the biggest thing we have to be careful of with a table saw? Kickback, right?
Yeah.
How does kickback happen? Right, so as we're pushing the board through, there's a certain number of situations that will cause kickback where the wood shoots back at us like this, and if you're standing in the way, it really hurts. I've seen it, I've experienced it. Someone here is going to have kickback happen to them. I can just sense it. So basically, because we've got a spinning blade that goes in this direction, we're pushing our wood through. Anytime wood is bound between a fence and a spinning blade and we take our hands away or we lose control of that piece, it has a tendency to come firing back. Okay? So there's a couple of tips I'm going to talk to you guys about so that this doesn't happen. Okay? First of all, when we set a table saw up for use, how high do we want the blade?
About 2 centimeters above.
Yeah, up to about 5 millimeters above the board, right? Or even a pencil thickness or a pencil width. So I have a pencil here, and actually it looks like maybe I can take that blade down just a hair. So the wheel on the front of the saw adjusts the height of the blade. All right. So I'm just going to crank this down just a little bit. This isn't rocket science, something like that. Why do we have our blade only, like, I like to say half of a finger width above the board? Mikey?
So that if you run your finger through, you only cut it half off.
Exactly, I must have taught you before, eh? Yeah, if you run your hands through, then your half a finger still attached, right? So we don't want to have any, yeah, okay, let's not go there. All right, so we have our blade adjusted, wheel in the front. Now I'm going to set the fence, and I want my board to be exactly 2 inches in width, okay? So the scale on the saw here on the fence actually works pretty well.
Professional.
Edit that out. No. So I'm going to set my fence here exactly at 2 inches and lock the handle. Now I'm ready to go here. So which edge goes against the fence? The reference edge, right? The edge that we are measuring and referencing everything from. So our reference edge goes against the fence. Ideally, our reference face down on the table, and that gives us our most accurate, our best chance of getting this thing accurate and square. Okay? This particular saw, in order to turn it on, uses this little paddle right here. We're going to pull it out to turn it on, push it in to turn it off. This particular machine is a saw stop, and that's a brand, and what that means is basically if anything conductive, like a finger or a metal ruler, touches the blade, there's a block, an aluminum block in there that comes and hits the blade and pulls it down, and it's a very nice safety feature, but it's also kind of expensive to replace, right? Kills the blade. This is a ripping operation, okay, which means that we are cutting along the grain of the wood. This machine is always going to be used in this case for that operation. This is set up as a rip saw. There is a blade in here which is designed for that purpose as well, okay? So a ripping blade, you guys will notice, has a different shape to it. The tooth profile on a rip blade has a different shape than a crosscut blade. If you will notice, the top of the teeth on a rip blade are all flat. Okay? It's meant, and it has larger gullets. The big hole here, right in front of the tooth, is called a gullet. And it has a larger gullet, and it allows more stringy, longer strings of wood fiber to fill that area. Okay? Has anyone here ever ripped with a chainsaw, done a rip cut with a chainsaw? No. Along the grain? What kind of shavings do you get from that, Jake, when you rip cut with a chainsaw? Yeah, what kind of shavings do you get? When you rip cut, you got a dull chain there. You got a dull chain if you're getting fine shavings. You should get long hair or long strings of hair, right, when you're ripping. Oh, yeah, yeah, right. So we need a larger gullet in the blade to account for that. Okay, that's it. So we have our fence set, we have our blade height set. What am I going to wear safety-wise? Yeah, glasses for sure. It is a fairly loud machine as well, so I will put earmuffs on when I actually do the cut. What about my hands? At what point do I need to use a push stick? Right, well actually when my board is narrower than this slot. If my fence covers this slot in the table, at this point now it's narrow enough that I should be using a push stick. Okay? What if it's this wide? Should I use a push stick just to be extra safe?
Nope.
No, why not?
You have more control of your hand.
You got more control with your hands, exactly. You got like 10 points of contact with your fingers. If you've got enough room to use your hands safely, use your hands. It's definitely the better way to go. But since I am cutting a fairly narrow board at 2 inches, I will definitely be using a push stick. All right? Okay, what should I be wearing or not wearing? Right, so I don't have long sleeves today, so that's good. I don't have anything hanging on me, which is a good thing. Yeah, my watch is on. I should probably take my watch off. I don't have long hair. If I did, I'd want to tie it back. And we're in good shape. There's one other feature on this saw which allows us to safely do a rip cut that we need to talk about. Okay? And that's this guy at the back of the blade here. And this is called a riving knife. All right? And what this does is it splits the wood. Sometimes it's also called a splitter. Okay? And what it does is it splits the wood. So as I push my board through and the saw cuts it, that riving knife here takes up the void that the saw just made. And in case there's any tension in this wood, sometimes what you'll see is that the wood actually wants to close up on the back of the blade. Sometimes it wants to open up. And this riving knife will prevent the wood from coming back and pinching the back of the blade, which would otherwise cause a kickback, right? So the riving knife has to be in place, it has to be there. We also have a guard. We also have a guard here that we can use as well. This guard is actually really good if we're cutting a lot of sheet goods. Okay, so we'll put this guard in here, and we hook a shop back up to this end of the guard, and it allows all the sawdust to kind of blow into the shop back. It's really good if we're cutting a lot of sheets and stuff. So plywood and things like that, we're going to put this guard on. Okay, we also have a wheel. It seems like there's so many things. There's a wheel on the side of the saw as well. What does that wheel do?
Adjust the angle.
Adjust the angle of the blade, right? So in this case, I want to make a perfectly perpendicular cut, so I'm going to leave that blade set right at 90 degrees, but it allows me to cut miters or bevels on the wood if I wanted to. All right? Let's make a cut. When I make this cut, I'm going to be standing, in my case, to the left of the blade because I'm right-handed. I don't want to be standing in the path of the board. All right? So the board's going to be right up against the fence, right flat down on the table. I'm going to stand just to the left, and I'm going to push this through with my push stick. And I'm going to push it all the way through. Even though it's done cutting by the time the board finishes halfway through the blade, because that's the highest part of the blade, I need to take my push stick and push it all the way through so that the wood doesn't stay running on the blade, right? Because that's a chance, again, that I'm going to get a kickback. I have to control the bound part of the wood all the way through and out. All right, here we go. we go. I have a little piece of scrap there. What do I need to do with that scrap? Yeah, we can clean it up, but what I have to do is wait till the blade totally stops spinning. Why did that piece not kick back? Okay, the splitter's there.
It's not pushed at the fence.
And it's not bound between the fence. It's not trapped between the fence. If that blade touches that board, it's just going to kind of flip sideways a little bit, right? So we always need to control the piece that's between the blade and the fence. That's the big deal right there. Let the waste just hang there. Turn the saw off. Let the waste just be there. It's not going to go anywhere. And clean it up once the saw stops. All right, there we have a rip cut on the table saw. And our board is now dressed on all 4 sides. And we're ready to go to the next step.